Hello everybody, I am back. Um, it's been almost 8 months, and the main reason for the huge delay is, well, two reasons. One is this game was really buggy, and I honestly wanted to finish Mordheim. But the other reason, which is truly the reason for why it took so long, was because I wanted to upgrade to a better machine because my frame rate was so low and I couldn't really handle I didn't really, I was playing on a laptop and I couldn't get the graphics to work. So now I'm playing on literally the best computer money can buy, probably in terms of a gaming computer, from what I can tell. I'm not a huge tech person, so I'm on an i7 core, like my CPU is an i7 and the graphics card is a 1070. So it should be able to handle any modern gaming with relative ease. And as you can see, I have like 60 frame rate on Mordheim and everything is just a lot smoother. That said, as I got back into Mordheim and sort of relearned the game a bit, because it's, been a while, um, I have to say I saw a bunch of new stuff. I saw new warbands, and I decided to try some of them, and right now I'm having just a total blast as the Undead. And it's because, for one, okay, so very quick blurb. For one, I identify as goth, and it's not because of, oh, I want to be in the dark and hate myself. It's more because I just like to be able to embrace the pain and the shit in life and laugh at it. And it came from, honestly, Addams Family. Growing up, I just really enjoyed watching that show, both the black and white one and the color one. So I decided actually to name my warband characters after the Addams Family. So Gomez, uh, Wednesday, Morticia, Lurch, Uncle Fester, Grandmama, Thing, Cousin It, and Pugsley. Now, before I get into so much of the gameplay, I'd like to say that if you haven't seen my videos before, I had done a bit of a series on the Skaven faction, and that was my first foray into this game, and and it was also literally the first time I put anything up specifically for YouTube. And I'm a huge strategy gamer. I've always known a lot about strategy games, and I've always delved very deeply into the genre. And I feel like a lot of people out there don't fully have the understanding of strategy gaming and the thought process, so they're not as methodical and about how they approach these games, and because of that, they don't generally get to enjoy it as much. So for me, I want to be able to share my passion as a strategy gamer for other people. I think that's the main reason for this channel. And another thing is, this is just me enjoying myself. I really enjoy playing strategy games in general, and Mordheim, with all its faults, is literally still the best turn-based strategy game out there that I can think of right now that can be used as a teaching tool for strategy gaming. And that's where I come in and, share my passion for things. Now, quick breakdown. Since I have already gone over a lot of, and I will link in the description of this video below my previous series on the Skaven, so that you guys who are new to this channel and new to me can sort of blast through them. I covered a lot of concepts about this game, but also about the thought process that I go through for strategy gaming in general, and sort of the things that I think about when I'm building a warband, or basically, planning out my party or team for depending on what game you're playing. But in this game specifically, I feel like Skaven actually fits me better because I like precision. I like being able to take out enemies fast, precise, quickly, ambush them, and then move on to the next target before they can even respond. Whereas a lot of the other warbands don't have that speed and precision that the Skaven have. That said, the Skaven are, I would say, not beginner friendly at all. Like, they're probably the hardest to learn because of how fragile all their units are. You have to really maximize the use of them by manipulating where you have your engagements, dictating where you start fights, how you ambush, when you want to charge in and kill someone really quickly, or when do you want to slow down the fight by controlling the engagement down to, through a doorway, so that you only have one character blocking a doorway to block off maybe 3 or 4 enemy characters that can't come through that door, and hold off a choke point or something. So I've gone over a lot of that stuff with Skaven, so I don't feel like it's necessary to go into that anymore. With this series, I'm just gonna try to play through the game. I'm pretty busy, as I am also an aspiring filmmaker, and I'm making short films and working on set a lot, so I'm just like usually pretty tired, and that's kind of why like my voice sounds like this, because this is like my inside voice. This is like me being super relaxed. I talk I'm very outgoing, very presentable, very social, like when I'm out there interacting with people on set, working with actors, working with people on the film crew. But for me, when I'm strategy gaming, I'm just in my zone. I'm in my mind, and with this series, and I know I didn't finish the Skaven, so I'm actually gonna go back and finish the Skaven series. But for now, I actually want to just try to finish as much of the game as possible using the Undead faction, because I've just fallen in love with this faction. And yes, it's partly because I'm gothic, and I don't feel like the possessed, or I forget what they're called, but I didn't feel like the possessed really clicked with me. They felt kind of stupid. Like, they felt like they were all just suicidal and insane and wants to mutate and leaves everything up to chance. And I'm not that kind of a player. If anything, if you've seen my Skaven games, I'm very much about methodical plays and precision. And I think the Undead as a faction is kind of a happy medium, in that they're a lot more beginner friendly. I think the reason why they're very beginner friendly is specifically because of their henchman, the zombie, and specifically because of a certain perk called Expendable. When falling out of action, does not lower the warband's morale, and if I'm not mistaken, Rotten Corpse. The zombie is immune to open wound effects and all injuries except destroyed, severed arm, severed leg, hand injury, full recovery. So, why does this make this faction extremely forgiving? It's because you have units that you can sacrifice and not worry about them dying. In this game, it's so unforgiving. The game itself is very unforgiving, no matter what faction you play, because you can't save and then reload. It's not like that at all. So every decision matters. Every mistake will matter. Every time, it's like you're playing. In terms of other games, in Mordheim, you're basically playing on Iron Man mode 100% of the time. If you fuck up and your unit dies, your unit dies, or your unit's gonna come back with like injuries that are permanent, that will have major effects on its max potential. So that means you want to not ever make a unit get knocked down at all. And I think I did achieve that so far in my games as the Skavens, if you look back on those videos, and again the link will be below. But with that said, I don't think it's fair that the developers make this game so punishing for newbies. I believe that even in a strategy game where you do have the competitive level, like really highly skilled players who understand what they're doing, you would still want to give a more beginner friendly type thing. And it's not necessarily tutorials, but like you would want to have a way to bridge that gap between beginners and experts at strategy games. I consider myself an expert at strategy games because I like playing this. I study game theory and statistics and stuff like that. So I love this type of thing. But for most newer players to the genre, who just, you know, might want to enjoy having the fantasy of running around with a specific faction, I think it's totally not necessary to actually go on that hardcore level of, oh, okay, you just fucked up a move, now your unit dies. I think that's going. I think that there should be a choice for the player in terms of whether or not they want to be on Iron Man mode. And for me, Iron Man mode is just really hardcore. But this is like Rotten Corpse. This skill makes this faction forgiving because it almost mitigates that Iron Man mode style of play. Because if a zombie gets knocked down in battle, as in its HP drops to 0 and gets knocked out, at the end of the battle, basically your units roll dice or whatever to determine its injuries. Sometimes you'll get a full recovery and you will not get injury at all, but sometimes you'll have like a severed arm or a severed leg or whatever. And actually, yeah, here's an example, like petrified. Okay, so this dude has injuries. He has megalomania and missing eye, and I'm not really gonna go into detail about explaining it. You can read this if you want, but he was knocked down twice in a fight. I mean, in 2 separate fights, and each time he came away with a permanent injury that limits him. And missing eye was just too much for me to handle, and I might fire him, I might not, or I might use him for a very specific purpose that isn't combat related. And that's weird to say, but you know, I'll talk about more about that later. I'm not sure if I remember talking about doctrines, but anyway, this is a beginner-friendly faction because of the zombies. If you're gonna use zombies, if you choose to use the ghouls, then suddenly this is like one of the hardest factions to play. And the reason why that is, and it's also the same reason why I don't really like the chaos or mutant or the possessed faction, it's the same faction, the other faction, is because of last stand. Always fights to the death, prevents the use of flee and retreat actions, immune to all alone. It sounds really cool, like, oh yeah, your unit's completely hardcore, doesn't care, doesn't ever feel like running away or whatever. But when your HP is low, when you drop down to close to 0 and you're almost wounded and you're about to like fall out of you know, battle, or you do want to retreat. I mean, duh, if you don't retreat, you're gonna get the injury, you're gonna get the chance. I mean, you could even have your units die. And in my case of this playthrough, it's kind of like, I'm not new to Mordheim, but it's been a while, like months and months since I played, so I screwed up a bunch. I made a bunch of mistakes, and I think in this playthrough I've lost at least 3 units, and they were all ghouls, because I can't pull back. If they're engaged to an enemy, you can't run away. So it actually makes it so that every engagement that a ghoul is in, you have, like this type of dude in, they have to win or else they die. And you know, it's like all in. all or nothing every single time, and that requires a lot of skill to be able to say I'm gonna win every single time this guy engages an enemy. I'm gonna win that fight. It's you can't always guarantee that, and so and plus ghouls are not meant to be. From what I've seen, they're first of all, they can't wear heavier armor. They only have cloth, which means they have to go agility build, which means their only sort of two options to be able to be tanky or survivable is melee resistance and dodge. And if you don't know what these are, I went into a lot of detail in my Skaven playthrough. So anyway, those are the basic units. Now, why I fell in love with this faction and why I believe this faction is ultimately one of my favorites next to the Skaven, and honestly, I don't think any faction will ever replace the Skaven as my favorite, but this is currently my one of my favorite factions because of just the vampires, the vampire thrall, and the vampire ability. So the vampires get, because every faction have their own abilities, right? So they have each faction have their own like actives and passives. My favorite two abilities of this faction is Death Trap, which basically means you can go somewhere and place a trap and it'll explode the next time an enemy walks over it, and it's permanently there until they trigger it. So you can leave traps all over the freaking map, okay? And when you do engage somebody, you can use a move that uses strategy points in order to lower their melee, their parry, and their dodge. Basically all three ways that any character can mitigate damage actively. Well, this is more passive, but they can still be in a stance. Anyway, this reduces pretty much 90% of all the ways anybody is going to use to prevent damage to their unit. This lowers it. And this is a faction-wide ability. Every unit can learn it. That said, only heroes can learn it to the second level of an ability. And I don't even have it on the second level yet for this unit. But it can lower all of this, lower it up to 10%, all at the same time, and it's just, oh, it's so amazing. Like, things try to dodge or block against you, you just death stench, and all your own units are immune to this. So you just go up to them, death stench, and they can't defend against you. It's so sweet. And then the let's see, what's the unit that I have on this? I think this guy has it. Yes. So Death Trap. So he just, I don't need to use him to engage enemies. I don't even need him to cast spells. He is a spellcaster. But I walk up to places where I think the enemies are going to go through. I place a trap and I walk away. If any of you play League of Legends, this is like having Teemo shrooms all over the map. And every freaking unit on the vampire side can learn Death Trap. So all your units can drop Teemo shrooms all over the map. And this allows you to control the map. This allows you to really dictate where they will fight, especially in PvP. Because, you know, if you're playing against a human player and they see your trap, they're not going to walk into it. But because they're not going to walk into it, you can zone them. And these traps have fairly decent radius. It's a 5-meter radius, so it's a 10-meter diameter. That's like a hallway. You can block an entire hallway with a death trap. So they can't walk through that hallway without taking a decent amount of damage and getting a debuff on them. So that's another reason why I like it. But this is like, the faction is all about controlling the map and controlling combat, and it's so control focused that I like it. It's not as precise as the Skaven, and it's for a very different reason. It's basically because the Skavens are the best at movement. The Skaven units all have 8 movement, and they can charge in. They have the advantage for charge because the range of charge is, movement. Um, but outside of that, and outside of the fact that the Skaven has like shurikens and other ways of like doing damage even when they're low health and just being full on like in your face the entire time while still being hard to kill and being all over the place all at once and moving quickly and overwhelming you, this faction, this Undead faction, is a more beginner friendly version of all of that using its own toolkit. And obviously, it's fun because I like vampires and gothy things, and I've just made it so I'm playing with the Addams Family. Actually, I should just name this the Addams Family. Because why not? Alright, so, playing with the Addams Family. I tried a bunch of things. I tried this unit here, this hero here. I've tried this guy, this type of unit. I think their spellcasters are gonna be great in PvP, because you will have, like, generally when you're in melee combat, you want to group around a single target and take them out quickly. Any player will do that, they'll try to focus fire on one of your units, but because they're gonna focus on one of their units, all their units are gonna be grouped up, and this spell, Spell of Doom, is an AoE. Enemies within 10 meters take damage. Bypasses armor. Okay, and it doesn't seem like a lot of damage, 14 to 24, and it's 4 offense point cost. So it seems like it's not, that effective. But this is an AoE. This is area of effect. You can use this, on if there's like, if say you're hitting only one enemy unit with this, it's not worth it. If you're hitting 2, it's like you're breaking even, because you're basically, on average, this amount of damage should be about 2 offense points, I would say. It's like hitting someone with a spear. But if you hit more than 2 enemy units at once with this, you're gaining profit. You're doing way more damage than what is normally possible with just this much offense points. And I think at late game you can do this spell twice, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 3 times if you use another ability to pump up your offense points. But basically, hitting a large group of enemy with spells of doom, and and having multiple copies of the Necromancer, I think it just gets ridiculous. But that said, I don't think I can rely on it right now. So, I mean, I've been experimenting with the Necromancer. That's why they're rank 5, and that's why Lurch is right now rank 0, because I just started using him. But I want to level up this big guy next. I've enjoyed using Morticia quite a lot, and I've enjoyed using Wednesday, and I built these two separately, like very different styles, and you'll see in a bit. But yeah, so in general, this is sort of my take on the Undead, and they're just, I don't know, I think they're really enjoyable. They're, see, I've already explained why you always want to go for Wordstone Rush, and why you always want to have the least amount of Wordstones on the map. So exceptional and brutal difficulty, that's terrible. You want to focus on Wordstone Rush, and you want to have like the least amount of Wordstones. That basically means that you only need to get a little bit of Wordstones in order to accomplish the secondary objective, and then get a fuckload of Wordstones afterwards. Always launch and deploy, always, because this lets you position your units. And let's begin.